It's pretty black and white.
Call to order the regular scheduled meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals. Notice to the public: the time, the date, the place, and the agenda for this meeting was given as a legal notice on November the 1st, 2024 in the Aiken Standard, and I apologize for my voice. Notice to contiguous property owners were mailed, and the public notice was signed and posted on the properties on or before November 1st, 2024. Notices were also sent of this meeting by November 22nd for posting on the city webpage and to the city clerk for posting on the municipal building notice board at least 24 hours before this meeting. Agenda sheets were mailed or emailed to interested parties. As a reminder, it is unlawful for any person giving testimony to this board knowingly providing false information. Now that's according to section 22-9 of the Aiken Municipal Code. Each infraction is a civil offense with a penalty of up to 30 days in jail and or a fine of $1,092.50. To the board, you have received copies of the minutes of the meeting from September 24. Are there any corrections or additions?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the minutes of the September 24th, 2024 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting be approved.
I'll second.
Been properly moved and second that the September 24th, 2024 meeting be approved. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion show by raise of the right hand.
I was absent.
And you are absent. I have approval, one absence. Old business, the letter is being circulated. We move directly into new business. I call your attention to application 25-93004. That's a various request to reduce side yard setbacks at 2015 Homestead Lane. That's zone RS15 to the city. Has this been properly posted?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it has.
Any inquiries that you wish to share with the board?
Yeah, so the planning department did receive one written comment, which is included in your agenda packet. That is the neighbor directly to the east, which the applicant is requesting the variance to. We did also receive one phone call to the property owner to the south, who I believe fronts their rear yard. They wouldn't necessarily have been impacted by the variance request, but we're just calling to figure out exactly what was going on there. I believe they're out of state. And yeah, in conversating with them, they were okay with the request.
Presentation.
Yes, sir. 215 Homestead Lane Southeast is a 0.3 acre lot located on the south side of the city to the east of Whiskey Road. The property is on residential single-family RS15 and developed as a detached single-family residence. The size of it is actually currently non-conforming. It is slightly smaller than 15,000 square feet for that lot. The request is for a variance to City Vacant Zoning Ordinance Section 421 to permit a 3-foot side yard setback to allow the applicant to construct an addition to the primary structure. The property is currently occupied by a detached single-family dwelling built in 1962 that is approximately 2,888 square feet in area. Pursuant to Section 421 of the City Zoning Ordinance, the primary structure on lots zoned RS15 must be set back from the side property line 10 feet. The existing structure is currently approximately 32 feet from the eastern property line. So this property line here is approximately 32 feet, maybe a little bit more, and is considered conforming along that property line. I'm not sure exactly how close it is to this property line, but it might be a little bit under 10 there. Information about the site plan had mentioned the proposed addition is contained in Exhibit B of your agenda packet. This was submitted by the applicant, kind of illustrating what they're proposing. So you can kind of see here a general site plan with the existing residence and the new garage addition, and with the setback requested and required here. This is just a rendering of the elevations, proposing the aesthetic, what it's going to look like to sort of match the pre-existing home. And this is sort of architectural drawings. This is the main structure of the garage. I believe they're also including some additional space in here, which would be this portion. But primarily this portion of the garage here would be the encroaching section. As depicted on the attached zoning map found in Exhibit C of your agenda packet, adjacent parcels are also zoned RS15 and primarily developed as single-family residential dwelling units. While the property is generally regular in shape, I mean, it does tail a little bit here. It's slightly, it's not quite rectangular. No other neighboring lot is as small. These ones are all fairly larger. Even these ones across the street here are larger. This one is slightly smaller probably, and I believe there's a historic cemetery on this lot here. But generally for the neighborhood, the lots are bigger than the applicant's lot. And as I mentioned before, it is non-conforming, legal non-conforming in the sense that it is sub 15,000 square feet for that lot. In addition, most other homes in the area do have attached garages. It's fairly typical for that neighborhood. So this is one of the few properties that does not. Exhibit D contains photographs of the property depicting existing conditions taken by staff. This is just a picture of our notice. This is the proposed location. I don't know if some of this is marked off or not for potentially where the building line would be. But in any case, it would sort of kind of attach to this portion here as indicated by that rendering. This is just to kind of illustrate its distance from the neighboring property. I believe using GIS, it would be approximately 25 feet building separation if the proposed garage is put there. And again, just to kind of give you context of the existing home, sort of lack of space, covered parking for the vehicles on the lot. Basically, this is just the home. There's no garage back in here, so the applicant is, seeking to change that there. Planning staff's evaluation of the request, as well as the applicant's response to the required 6 variance criteria, can be found starting at page 2 of your agenda packet. This concludes staff's presentation. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any question from the board to the city?
Mr. Chairman, I had one question for the city.
Karen?
I thought I had highlighted it, so I apologize if it's in here, but I'm making the assumption this is not in any sort of historic overlay and/or district subject to DRB.
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
And I meant to make note of this, the neighbor letter, that was an approval. Is that the driveway side neighbor or?
Yes, sir. Yep, it would be this neighbor here.
Okay.
Yep, directly to the east. And you know, they would theoretically be the most impacted by that encroachment.
Just want to make sure chimed in. Thank you.
So you don't have any idea what the opposite side setback is?
I'm not sure how far it is from the property line. The applicant probably could tell you a little bit more. I mean, generally these are approximations, just because they're digital representations. But I mean, even if it were sub 10 feet, I mean, it would be considered legal nonconforming. But yeah, it's probably pretty close, but you can kind of see it is sort of more constrained generally. The house is more constrained on lot generally than some of these other larger properties here, right, where they have a little bit more room to work with. But the applicant may be able to specify exactly how far it is on that west side there.
Do we have any further questions from the board to the city? Thank you. The applicant? Would you read yourself into the minutes, please?
Yes, sir. Good evening. My name is Philip Mary, and I live at 215 Homestead Lane. My wife, Amy, is here with me. She's actually the owner of the house. I'm just the mouthpiece.
Do you receive a copy of the staff report? Do you
Yes.
wish to embellish that or just respond to and from questions from
I
the
would
board?
add, I think Max has done an excellent job, but when I asked for the 3-foot setback, the variance to allow for 3-foot setback, that's presuming that there was about 27 feet distance from the eastern side of my house to the property line. I measured it based off of where the fence line is. If indeed the space between the side of the house to the property line is 32 feet, then the addition that I'm planning doesn't get as close to the property line. In other words, if that's the line and I just measured the wrong place, instead of being 3 feet from it, you know, if that line's really over here, then I'm more like 5, or in that case, it would be 8 feet from it. But my measurement in the field with a tape measure or stepping it off just to the fence line would have put me about 3 feet from the fence line. And so that's what I've worked off of in this application. If Mr. Planky actually has better information than I did, then I really may be further away from that property line than what I'm even asking for, in which case I'm not gonna use all it. I won't go to that 3 feet just because you gave me approval. I'm still only gonna build what I've proposed to build that I showed the floor plan for. I'd actually rather it have a little more space. I hope he's right.
Yeah, no, I'll just clarify. I mean, that's just a measurement using our GIS tool.
Okay.
Unfortunately, they are somewhat imprecise
Yeah.
because it's a digital representation of the property lines. So give an estimation, but it's probably somewhere in between those two numbers.
I do have an old survey when I bought the house, to answer Mr. Brecht's question. While it doesn't show the distance on the eastern edge to the eastern property line is where the side that I'm want to put the garage on, it does show from the western side to the western property line, that's 17.9 feet. It doesn't look like that much, but again, you don't know exactly where the lines are. I haven't had it marked, but according to the survey, which they would have, of course, found the pins and so forth, it's 17.9 feet on that side.
On the opposite side?
Yes, sir. Over. according to the survey, is 17.9 feet.
Wow, okay.
Right, and that probably speaks to the imprecise nature of the GIS mapping. So in reality, it's probably shifted the box around the the property line is probably shifted to the west
Yeah,
in actuality.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
'Cause
think
I paced off your driveway,
Uh-huh.
and it was 24 feet, like from even with
sounds right.
the edge of the house to where
Well, that's
the
an
pavement
excellent,
kind of ended, and that was 24 feet, just
That's-
with my pacing. So I don't think that's 17 feet, but
well, no, I think we just got that explanation. The box in the real world, not on the computer, should be shifted to the left a little bit because the property line is indeed closer to the house on the left, and it is a little bit closer to me on the right. So I think that whole box needs to move. But since you were there, and the rest of you may have attended also, may have come also, but the widest terminal edge of what I proposed would be no wider than the existing concrete. Follow me? So if you know where that concrete edge was, that's the widest, and he had a photograph of that, so.
yeah, I was going to ask you to identify.
So the edge of this, I sort of based it off this, and I had worked around, I got some gas lines and stuff, so basically that's the line, and that's what I've shown my neighbors and everything. That concrete line is roughly the line.
Where is the property line exactly in there? Is it the fence we're looking at?
That's what I've assumed. And I think that's true because there's a lot of other little clues, but I haven't had a surveyor come out and mark it precisely. It's either the fence line or it may be 5 feet to that side, to the left side of the fence line if the digital representation were accurate. I don't think the digital representation is that accurate. I think the fence line is the property line. And there's a lot of other little clues, like if you can find original corner post in the back, or not, I don't know if it's original, but it's an old one, marking what looks like the corner of my property, the neighbor property, and then the Williams Cemetery. And then if you go by the placement of things like utility boxes, phone boxes and whatnot, that property line would be on the fence line, as is on the other side. You can see the same sort of things. There's telephone poles, utility boxes, and the fence line on the other side is the same. So I think these fence lines are right. So I do indeed think I'm going to be 3 feet. I wish it was 5 feet, but I think it's going to be 3 feet from the property line. And as Mr. Planky noted, this is not solely, the garage is sort of the big picture, but there's another thing that we really desperately need is a laundry room. So the only reason my wife is buying into this whole plan is because she wants a laundry room. So that's part of, as you can see, this, that's there. This house, very small floor plan, very small footprint. We have no storage, hardly, and no laundry room. And we've made do, but, she's tired of me having to store tools and other stuff in the house. We don't even have closet space. So there's stuff tucked behind everything. So this would afford me not only a place for lawnmowers and outdoor tools and equipment and all that, but the laundry room and then a place to park the cars. We had 2 cars heavily damaged in the hurricane. Both of them were classic collector vehicles, and that I've been working on this drawing for a long time. But when those cars got hit with Hurricane Helene, I finally said, "This is it. I got to go forward with this garage." Now, this literally occurred to me in the last week or so since I have done this application. One other possibility, preferably y'all, is I can slide this whole thing back. And the advantage, it still would be just as close on the side. The advantage of doing that is it would give a slight bit more building separation between me and the neighbor. He and I have stood in the space, walked it off, and he's perfectly comfortable with it the way I proposed it. But should y'all have a concern there, I can slide it back about 9 feet. If I go back too far, then I suddenly start potentially encroaching on the setback at the rear, which is a deeper requirement. So I can't go back infinitely, but I could go back, I think, 9 feet, and that puts the front edge of my garage essentially on the same plane or as far back as the back edge of that end of my neighbor's house, and that's his master bathroom there. So it'd basically be the front of my garage would be as far back as the back edge of his master bathroom. Does that make sense? And that's just that might be helpful in terms of building separation from y'all's point of view. I thought of it because I thought he might, when he looks out of his bathroom window, rather not see the side of my garage, he might want a little more light, a little more view. So I thought of it for that reason. But at the same time, I thought, if I were going to do that, I need to propose it to these guys in case that's important to y'all.
What you just discussed, what you just proposed then is when he looks out either the bedroom window or the bathroom window on his side, he'd see the same thing as what he sees now, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. His view, there's on that side, I think there's actually a closet. The windows are a closet and a master bath. And what he sees now is what he would see then after it's completed if we slid it 9 feet back. Now, if he looked at an angle, he'd still be able to see the new garage. But as far as looking straight out, the view would be the same.
Mr. Chairman, I had a question. How old is that survey?
This is when I purchased the house on November 13th, 2006.
Okay. So fairly recent in the grand scheme of things.
On my purchase, I had it resurveyed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's one other thing that just came in my head I wanted to tell y'all, and now it's gone. So if it comes back, I'll tell you. I'm a car guy. I like to tinker with my cars, and right now, part of the reason that those classic cars were in the driveway is because I do tinker with them. I think if any of y'all came to the house today, you would see the one that's not in the shop right now is jacked up on the back end because I'm about to rework the rear hubs on it and stuff. And it certainly would be better for not only me but the neighbors as far as looking at the tools and that truck right now is on jack stands. If you were there, Mr. Breck, and saw that, certainly be better for everybody and for my tinkering to have a garage. But it also, obviously, my wife would like the benefit of a garage as well, and my family, and it would get those out of sight, and it'd protect them from hurricanes.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Mr. Mary, so in relation to moving the footprint, I understand the potential to maybe shift it back. And I'm not a builder, so you might be able to walk me through this. Why, with where it is now, why the 3-foot jut out from the attachment going into the?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one was the placement of the gas line and the gas meter.
I saw the meter there.
Yeah, and number two was to
You have a gutter runs down
work
there.
out the roof lines, because the roof line on the front of this is going to be different, and kind of by necessity has to be, because ultimately the ridge is higher. So it gives the ability for this to have its own distinct and separate roof line, and this can then tie in on the same plane with the roof that's there. So it made it work. Now, this idea of sliding back, I'm going to talk to my draftsman and see if the roof line, if the roof line can work and all that. So my preference would be as drawn, because I know the roof line works. We slide it back. I don't know what my draftsman will say.
I mean, those 3 feet, especially if you're off a foot or two as it is, heck, you might even be inside the.
No, it wouldn't be inside of the
Okay.
setback.
Okay. If you're off 3 or 4 feet and you're able to get it flush to the house,
Yeah,
you'd
well,
be there.
Well, the other problem is I have to stay as far left as I can because of where the gas line's going to come off the street. garage, just make it almost unfunctional. So I wanted, as is now with the concrete, I want it to be a straight shot as I can. Right now, all my utility lines, and they had just been painted, but the rain wiped it out. But all my utility lines are like hard up against the side of the driveway. So without really a practical way of moving the driveway, the straight shot in was what I was aiming for. That, and then with the gas meter location, and there was something else over there, and I've sort of blank on what that was, but there was another reason we had to do that, and I can't remember what that was. I had this drawn over a year ago, so I don't have a perfect recollection of everything. Now, and as far as the whatever discrepancy there is, if there is indeed a discrepancy, which it sounds like now that we've identified that there's not, but if there were a discrepancy, it would be to the benefit of the neighbor. You see what I'm saying? There'd be, in fact, there'd end up being more space. But but if there is a discrepancy, then conceivably, and I don't think there is, but if there were a discrepancy, then conceivably his fence would already be on my property. But my proposal is basically to be on that edge of that concrete where it is now, which is roughly 3 feet from the property line. And we're working on the assumption that that property line and the fence are one and the same.
Yeah, and I only ask, I mean, you got a large scale project going on here with this addition, clearly. I mean, you're adding,
Yeah.
what, 1,200 square feet? So you got a lot of construction going on. So generally, I'm much more concerned about preserving a driveway line or something like that on somebody just trying to add something.
Yeah.
With the scope that you got going, I don't know.
Well, you mentioned preserving a driveway line. This is a little inaccurate. This driveway basically comes in straight here. And then this is really, it's one car wide, and it's over here, as y'all saw, because it comes in, really the flare touches the corner of the property, but then it comes in about 3 feet along that line. So I just kind of kept that space. And that driveway, because he didn't survey the driveway, he just oriented that, but the driveway's here, so it comes in like that. So there still will be a jog, but it's not gonna be, that just takes 3 feet out of that. And you've always heard about people that hit their car getting in and out of garages, because they're trying to make an angle as they're backing out or pulling in or whatever. But that is really a straight shot in keeping with the idea of maintaining the driveway.
If you did shift it back, you would have potentially another 9 or 10 feet to work the plane into a new
Yes,
target.
Yes, you would.
Okay.
9 feet, I think, is the most I can get. 10 maybe, but I think
Yeah.
I think 9 is probably fairly accurate. And
Thank
again,
you.
for that plan, I've got to get the draftsman to
Right.
figure out the roof. I think it can be done, but I don't know. This all occurred to me in the last 10 days or so.
Yeah, I mean, clearly, I think overall sympathetic to your desire to want to shelter your cars.
Yeah.
You have quite the you have quite the Taj Mahal garage going here. So just, I would want it incumbent upon you to try to fight for every foot that you can. I mean, a 3-foot variance is tight.
Yeah, it is.
That's getting 3 of those back would be.
Yeah. I looked throughout the neighborhood, and there were a couple spots that were close like that. And I know this is not part of your consideration, so I hesitate to mention it. But I was trying to get a sense of that space, and in so looking, I found within about 900 feet of my house, and I came up with 900 feet because that's how far away South Boundary is. And that basically gave me a sort of a radius for the neighborhood. Within 900 feet of my house, I think there were 19 houses that encroached on the setbacks. Not all of them were necessarily on the side. Some of them might be in the rear or the front, but there were a few that were very close, like that 3 feet number. One of which is the property, I know Mr. Coward would recognize that Chinaberry
They have an apartment section that is on the property line. That one obviously is the most non-conforming. It's right on the edge of Ray Lane, at the corner of Ray Lane and York. But there are several others where, 19 in that small footprint that are non-conforming, and there's a couple others, maybe 3, that were as tight as this. But I was surprised, shocked, just in my neighborhood, which is a newer part of that, there's the old Aiken grid and all that, and we're essentially a little island in the middle of the old Aiken grid. And because we were newer, I didn't expect to see as many non-conforming properties as I did. I didn't expect to see as many encroachments as I did, because by the time this was developed, there were zoning ordinances and setback requirements and everything else. Mine is, as Mr. Planky said, is not only the smallest in the neighborhood, but it's RS-15, and it's under the 15,000 square feet requirement, and it's a little bit narrower in the rear, I think, than the minimum width requirements for the zoning type. And so that's part of, because it sort of starts to pinch as it go deeper. That's why I'm running out of space so quickly. Most every other lot's wider than mine. And well, I think by the ordinance, they're supposed to be at least 100 feet wide in width the whole way. But mine too is, as he mentioned, is the smallest. There's another really small one. The exact one he pointed out is much smaller. And then I know Williams Cemetery is not a privately owned lot, but that's smaller. So there's a few other ones equal to or smaller than mine, but the vast majority of them are much larger.
Mr. Chairman, and looking at your proposed layout and everything, I was there when I called you. I was there on the property, and just to get some clarification. But it looks like you have a sizable hole in the side of your house. Are you going to tackle that at the same time?
Yes, sir. That was going to coordinate this, because I'm going to have the roof is really damaged too, all over, not just that hole. So I was going to have to put a whole new roof on. Because these were going to tie together, it didn't make sense to do one and then come back and tear off to redo the other. And not only does it tie together, but the roof itself, you'd have to see how the roof ties together, but the roof itself blends. And so I'm trying to wait and do all of this at one time, if it's possible. Yeah, we had 6 trees on the property. Only one of them was my tree. The other ones came from my friendly neighbors. But 2 of them hit 2 cars. One of them hit the house, and then 3 others just hit the driveway, hit the front.
Mr. Chairman, I just had one other question. In your response to number 3, you had alluded to marketability and value. You're not planning to sell anytime soon?
No, she won't let me.
Okay.
No, actually, I wouldn't spend this I'll never get this, people talk about return on investment. I'll never get this money back out of this house. So I wouldn't spend this money if I was planning on leaving. It'd be foolish. But it does, one day my kids are going to have to sell it when I'm 6 feet under. And given the fact that the other houses in the neighborhood have certain features that mine doesn't, it would make mine conceivably less desirable. The real challenge for me, the thing that frustrates me every day is our footprint. Our first floor is this house, y'all wouldn't have recognized it now versus then, but the second floor is bigger than the first floor, and it cantilevered over. So the first floor is minuscule. That's why we don't have closets or anything else on the first floor. And so that's the frustrating aspect for me. So this is going to give us, that's part of the reason for that size, but this is going to give us laundry room space. It's going to give us storage space. It's going to allow that first floor to live a little better versus us having to go downstairs all the time. And I'm happy to answer any other questions.
additional question for Mr. Mayor? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robert.
Do we have others to speak to the variance request? Final call, others to speak to the variance request? Seeing, hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion so we can enter a period of discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
But
I'd like to make a motion for approval of application 25-93004 for a variance to section 4.2.1 of the zoning ordinance to permit an approximately 3-foot side yard building setback along the eastern side of the property zone residential single-family RS-15 and generally located at 215 Homestead Lane, southeast, tax parcel number 121-09-22-006. The location and design of the structure be consistent with the submitted site plan or agreed to as we have discussed in this meeting. The final order shall run with the land, and the final order shall be recorded in the Aiken County ROD office.
I'll second.
it's been probably moved and second that we approve the variance request. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion show by raise of the right hand. You are voting against.
I am.
The motion is carried with a vote of 5 to 1. I call your attention to application 25-93005. A variance request to permit a reduced side yard setback at 176 Pendula Court in the zone RS6. Has this been properly posted?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, it has, and I do apologize. The slide there has the incorrect address and tax parcel number. I apologize, but that is the correct request before you.
Right. Any inquiries that you wish to share with the board?
Yes, so the planning department did receive one comment regarding the specific requests before you for the variance. That would have been from the adjoining neighbor to the east here. But there are also some additional comments that were received during the administrative waiver process that had been previously applied for in your agenda packet as well, for context.
Presentation.
Yes, sir. 176 Pendula Court Southeast is a 0.2 acre lot located on the east side of the city to the south of Toolbeck Road. The property is zoned residential single-family RS6 and developed as a detached single-family residence. The request is for a variance to zoning ordinance section 421 to permit an approximate 6-foot yard setback to allow the applicant to retain a detached accessory structure in the rear yard of the property. The property is currently occupied by a detached single-family dwelling unit built in 2009 that is approximately 1,616 square feet in area. Pursuant to section 421 of the city zoning ordinance, accessory structures on lots zoned RS6 must be set back 10 feet from the side and or rear property lines. A legal non-conforming detached structure was present on the site prior to the applicant's ownership. The applicant subsequently removed that structure, the existing detached structure, and replaced it with another newer structure This pre-existing structure was actually a bit closer to the property line than the current structure. So, yeah, but basically it was removed. It was considered legal non-conforming, but unfortunately, once you remove legal non-conforming structures, anything that is to be in its replacement is required to conform to the current standards. So based on that, the applicant, excuse me, I'll go back one here. The applicant applied for administrative waiver from the city. The city offers administrative waivers for detached accessory structures to be in the setbacks, as long as our engineering department does not have a problem with it, as long as our public safety does not have a problem with its location, and as long as neighboring property owners are okay with the location as well. And that waiver was to permit the replacement structure approximately 5 feet from the property line. But unfortunately, that was denied in 2023, July of 2023. Basically, the neighbor was not, did not want it in that location. Subsequently, the planning department was notified by the applicant that the structure had been moved to a conforming location. That was verified by our zoning official to meet setback requirements. But then some time had elapsed after that point. And we were again notified by the neighboring property owner that the shed had been, basically put back or was lowered back into the setbacks. So making it once again kind of unfortunately non-conforming. And we did make an additional site visit to the property, confirming that it was not within that 10-foot setback. Information about the site plan and dimensions of the proposed structure is contained in Exhibit B of your agenda packet. This is just the original site plan that we received, just slightly modified here, stating that on average it's approximately 6 feet. I think it's a little bit further because it's slightly angled towards the rear of the structure, so I think it gets closer to 7, but it gets a little bit closer, as it's slightly angled. But anyway, this is the site plan submitted by the applicant. As you can kind of see here, there's also a concrete pad with a pergola, I believe, and a pre-existing pool that sort of hem this area in a little bit, making it somewhat difficult to comply with the 10-foot setbacks without some sort of removal or moving of these two additional structures. As depicted on the attached zoning map found in Exhibit C, adjacent parcels are zoned R6 and primarily developed as single-family residential dwelling units. As is typical, there are several detached accessory structures in the area that appear to be located in the required setbacks. It's fairly common, especially if they're sub 200 square feet, because they don't require building permits. And again, we provide that administrative waiver process because it is a fairly common occurrence, and they typically get approved. The one thing that we cannot approve is if a neighbor is adamant against its location in this particular case. While the size of the applicant's lot is fairly typical for the wider development, it is generally one of the smaller ones on the block. It is slightly larger than these 3 to the east, but again, as you can kind of see, some of these other ones are quite a bit larger as you go to the kind of northwest, north, and further east here. So these are fairly typical for the size of the development, but along Pendula Court, they tend to be larger. And these are some of the smaller ones in that cul-de-sac. Exhibit D contains photographs of the property depicting existing conditions. Again, just our notice here on the property. This is a picture that was taken by our zoning official initially while the shed was under construction. Kind of see it in the back here. Again, sort of under construction. And this is at the time that the applicant was requesting the administrative waiver. So work was sort of, halted while that was processed. This was after we had received the second call from the neighboring property owner alerting us to the possibility of it being in the setbacks again. As you can see, it's built out at this point. This is from the rear of the property looking northward on the undeveloped lot on the rear another thing to kind of keep in mind is this neighboring property owner, their property line is parallel with this, more or less this fence line, but as you can see, they've left it sort of unused, and it's sort of grown up there. So there's not really anything that's adjacent to this structure. It's basically just vegetation, but it is still technically that property owner's property. This is just a measurement of the side there, and as you can see, it's just under 6 feet to the edge of the fence. The property line is probably somewhere in between the two fence lines, but unfortunately we didn't have a survey to work off of, so we can only kind of really estimate essentially if it's not marked out, but it appears to be maybe 6.5 feet probably from that property line on the east there. This is the rear, again, just to kind of illustrate that to the fence line, it's, again, about 6.5 feet. So yeah, the structure appears to be, again, located in the setbacks, and this is as of July of this year. Planning staff's evaluation of the request, as well as the applicant's response to the required 6 variance criteria, can be found starting at page 2 of the agenda packet. This concludes staff's presentation. If there are any questions, happy to answer.
Any question from the board to the city?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. What is refresh my memory, the difference between what the HOA requires and what the zoning ordinance does?
Yeah, so typically, I mean, we're not charged with the enforcement of any additional restrictive covenants on the property that may be in place as a result of an HOA being in place. Typically, HOAs place additional property controls. For example, they may say, certain architectural designs are only allowed, or certain square footages or something like that, or the property can only be used, they can't be like rented out or something like that. So they're typically additional controls placed on the property that are in place and enforced by the HOA, but we don't really get into any of that enforcement. It's again, up to the HOA to establish those rules and kind of monitor that. And usually the more restrictive applies. So if, for example, we would allow 50% of the square footage of the home, so they could potentially go up to whatever, 800 square feet, but the HOA says, well, our maximum for the neighborhood is 250. Typically the more restrictive applies, but we don't get into enforcing that. We're charged with just what they can do by right based on our ordinance. It would be up to the HOA to kind of enforce their covenants.
So we're looking at two different situations from what I read, that there is some differences within the HOA and also the zoning ordinance.
Yeah, that appears to be the case. It appears that they regulate the total size of these structures, but it's kind of really up to them to enforce that. Now, it's my understanding that they have a limit on the total square footage, and we went out there and kind of measured the interior, which is quote unquote the livable space, and it was conforming based on those dimensions. If you kind of subtract the distance between the edge of the wall and if you put any siding on the interior. But again, we really don't get involved in HOA restrictions. It's up to the HOA to kind of enforce that.
Mr. Chairman. So that, I guess, I'm a little unclear. The red shed was non-conforming pre-existing.
Yes, sir.
Is that right?
Yes.
And so the red shed was removed
Yes, sir.
by the current owner.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and then the building in question now was under construction in, looks like July of 2023, when the applicant came to ask for a variance for the building, and the building was under construction.
Yes, sir.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was brought to our attention, I believe, by the neighboring property owner that the new structure was going up. So we made contact with the property owner, offered them the administrative waiver, you know, to basically get it on file that it's in the setbacks. But as long as neighboring property owners are okay, as long as engineering and utilities is okay, and as long as our fire department isn't concerned with building separation issues, generally they get approved by the planning director. You know, because it's fairly common, especially for these detached structures, sheds, because they're not like living, you know, they're not part of the attached home, right? So they're typically storage of tools or equipment, lawnmowers, that kind of stuff, right? So, but part of that process is notifying neighboring property owners, and if a neighboring property owner is not, you know, willing to have that in that location, we are unable to approve it administratively. It would have to then come before you. But yeah, that was the process.
So that was denied,
Yes, sir.
and the property owner was duly notified that this under construction had to conform, otherwise it was denied.
Yes, sir. Yep.
So, going from then to now, did the zoning official go out and check this to see if, I think you indicated maybe in the admin, a denial of the administration approval, you told him to move it and get it within compliance, is
Yes,
that
sir.
right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, and that was done. Basically, he went out there and verified that it was you know, conforming after the denial. So it was
So it
believe,
was
put up on jacks and kind of, you know,
Moved.
relocated. Yes, sir.
to come into compliance?
Yes, sir.
And it was
Yep.
verified that, yes, he did do that. It was verified by the zoning official that met the requirements
Yes, sir.
of being, of the setback requirement.
Right.
Okay.
But to the best of our ability. Again, we didn't have like a surveyed, you know, parcel, but based on the fence line, you know, it was, you know, to the best of our ability, conforming.
But pulling a tape,
Right. Yes, sir.
given the conditions, it was determined that it was within compliance.
Yes, sir.
But now it's not.
Yes, sir.
Is that what I understand?
Yes, sir.
So somehow, it, either the building moved or something moved between then and now, is that right?
That's my understanding, yeah. I believe the applicant has stated that in the process of kind of lowering it off of the jacks that it may have shifted slightly. Again, he may be able to explain the situation a little bit better, but again, we were notified by the same property owner to the east here that, you know, within that time period, it appeared as though it was once again in the setbacks, and we went out and confirmed that it was indeed the case. So this was, you know, the year after, essentially. I believe we were notified sometime in late spring by the neighboring property owner, and so we went back out there for a third time, essentially, to just pull measurements, and then this is the measurements that we got there.
So it was several feet different from what you had measured
It
before?
appears to be that way, yes, sir.
Okay.
Chairman. Max, so the double variance, the rear is 10 feet as well?
Yeah, so it's 20% of lot depth for the primary structure, but detached accessory structures are 10 foot from the rear.
Okay.
So it's basically 10 foot all around, unless it's, there's some exceptions for stuff that's used for like automobiles, but those are primarily concerned with like front yard setback stuff. So, but yeah,
And-
anything in the side or rear would have.
And that's developable land behind the lot in question?
I believe so, but it is owned by the city. So I don't know. We can kind of zoom out here. I believe there's some utility lines back there too. But yeah, that is currently owned by the city of Aiken back there.
Thank you.
Mr.
Mr. Chairman,
Nancy,
ask Max something. I'm confused. How far is this shed from the back property line?
Yeah, so that's that second picture. Excuse me. That's this one here with the kind of see the hand in it there. So, you know, again, we're kind of going off of the fence line, but it looks like it's just over 6 feet. You can kind of see that's 6 right there. That's 7.
Okay, so we're,
Yeah, it looks like it's what 76 inches, 73 inches. But again, that's this sort of back corner here.
we're asking for variance for the rear and the side?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
does the board have other questions for the city?
One other quick question. The address of the adjacent neighbor is what, Max? That's objecting, or that had objected.
I'm not sure their address, but that's this property here, and that's it should be on that the earliest comment, or yeah, the most recent comment you have in your application there.
Okay, looking through some of these emails, then I guess his address would be the adjacent neighbor would be 184 Pendula Court.
Yeah, I believe that's the case. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and that's this property owner here. And primarily objecting to the location.
I have one more question. On the photograph that shows the front of the house and the two fences, there appears to be a space between those.
Correct.
Is there where's the property line? Between them on?
Probably. It's difficult to say without it being surveyed. Again, we can only go off of existing, markers. But it is possible that one fence is on the property line and one fence is slightly off. I mean, it is possible that it's an average between the two. But yeah, unfortunately, even with, kind of averaging that distance, it's still, sub 10 feet. We can really only go off of, unless the property is surveyed, pre-existing landmarks, so to speak.
Okay, thank you.
So we kind of have to assume that the property line is closer to the applicant's fence than not, unless we had other evidence on the ground to suggest otherwise.
Mr. Chairman, can you go back to one of the pictures that shows like the neighborhood, sorta, an overview?
That?
Nope, need one that's darker than, okay. Where is the shed right now? Looking at that, to the left or to the right?
Yeah, it's sort of back in this left-hand corner here. I'm not sure when this satellite imagery was taken. I believe you can kind of see a structure here, but it looks like it's actually the older one.
This is the
So
older
if this hasn't been taken in the satellite imagery is,
But it's in the same-
more than a year old.
Okay, and property next door, it doesn't go back as far as this property?
It does, but they've only.
Yeah, it does. They have
Oh, okay.
decided not to maintain
Alright.
it, essentially. It's sort of become,
Okay, I was wondering why he was objecting if it didn't even abut his property, but it does. Okay.
yeah, it does technically. But yeah, they've sort of let this kind of, go back to its natural state. They've kind of built their fence line here and have, there's nothing back here but vegetation, essentially, kind of like wild vegetation. But yeah, I mean, the lots are, equal depth along this plane here. And it looks like that's fairly common. I mean, these folks probably also have kind of, in here too, they sort of have smaller yards relative to their actual property line. It's only this kind of, is more maintained as the actual property versus some of these others here.
Other questions to the city?
This may, because of my surgery, I was not able to go out to the house, but there is a garage on this property. I don't see it in any of the pictures.
The applicant may be able to address that, but I believe, yeah, it's standard. I don't know if we have a picture of the front, but
I couldn't see one in any of the pictures.
yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't get a good picture of that portion of the home, but the applicant should be able to clarify. But
So
I mean, there is a garage, there is a driveway here, so I
Is it a
presume-
1-car or 2-car?
Unfortunately, I'm not familiar enough with that portion of the property, but the applicant should be able to clarify that for you.
Thank you.
Any further questions to the city? Thank you. With the applicant, would you read yourself into the minutes, please?
Good evening. Robert Trepsas, owner and occupant of 176 Pendula Court. Linda Worthen, my girlfriend, also owner but not occupant of the property. If I may. All the property back here is a gas easement from the Tennessee Gas Authority. Goes right through here. The person that previously owned my property put a fence up. You can see the property line in blue, and you can see just a shadow of the fence. My fence is 16 inches in from the property line on all 3 sides of my house. So when the question was asked about the space, if you don't mind going back, Mr. Planky. The question was asked about these 2 fences here. There's 32 inches between the fences, and the property line is right down the middle of them. Both owners kept their fence at 16 inches in. If you don't mind going back to the rear property line. This fence is also 16 inches in from the rear property line from the gas easement that's back there. So I was told by my neighbor that when the people purchased the houses back in 2007 and 2008, the city or the gas company told them not to put anything in the back of their property, because if the gas company had to come back there and do any work, they would basically wipe out anything you had in their way. They didn't care. Myself and my neighbor to the right, 184, are the only 2 properties on the street that have fences. Every other property going this way has no fence. This is their property line in yellow, and they have no fence going behind their properties. My neighbor decided to keep his fence in 35 feet from the property line. The previous owner of my property decided to put their fence 16 inches from the property line. That's where it was when I bought the house. The pool pool was there, the shed was there, the concrete pad was there. The shed that was existing, which if you don't mind going to that picture, please, Mr. Planky. That red shed right there was existing. That was 3 feet from the property line on the side and on the back. It was rotted in the back corner. There was an animal living in it. Unfortunately, I had my granddaughter down. She went in there to change her clothes to go into the pool and almost got bit by the animal. I don't know what she said it was. But right after that, I decided to tear the shed down and replace it. When I did that, I moved it further from the property line on both the back and the side to align with the concrete pad that was previously installed that had the metal pergola on it, which you can see here. This concrete pad, which is 17-foot square, was existing. The other shed was pushed over to within 3 feet of the property line. It was kind of set back in the corner, which is kind of what everybody in the neighborhood has kind of done, is they push them into the back corners. So when I tore it down and put up the new one, I aligned it with the concrete pad, and I used the concrete pad as a footing, so I wouldn't have to dig footings on the front edge of the on the front edge of the shed. So it sat right on the concrete pad, and that's why I lined it up, and that's why I put it where it was. It's actually 7.5 feet from the property line now, because if you don't mind going back to the fence with the pictures with the tape measure, Mr. Planky. On this one here, the property line, like I said, is another 16 inches between my fence and my neighbor's fence, which would be further to the right. And if you don't mind going to the back, again, the fence is at 6'6", and I have another 16 inches to the property line in the back. The fence was just kept in when it was built, which had nothing to do with me. It was there originally. So if you don't mind going to the picture of my original drawing, Mr. Planky. On this, it looks like I was looking for 6 feet and 6 feet. The shed is actually 7.5 feet on the left to the property line, because the green line here is my fence line. You can see, green. Actually, I wrote green property line, but I didn't realize at the time that the property line was in between. So I actually have 7.5 feet to the property line on the left and 7.5 feet to the property line in the back. And I do have a garage, Mrs. Dukes. I know you asked. I do have a garage on the property. It has a 16-foot door on it, so it's considered a 2-car garage. Although I drive a pickup truck that doesn't fit in the garage, so I don't use my garage as a vehicle. Right now, I have a golf cart in my garage right now, so, and lots of storage. Because again, the house is only 1,600 square feet. It's very small. Not a lot of storage, so a lot of the stuff that's usually inside is in the garage. So the shed in question, which I did put up, it says, again, this was an original drawing. It says it's 192 square feet, which it's not. I actually have a letter from Mr. Dennis, who's the zoning inspector, saying that he came out and measured the shed, and it's only 167.5 square feet of floor space. The covenants in my neighborhood for the homeowners association state that you can't have an accessory building more than 168 square feet. So I stayed a half a square foot underneath the covenants for the town, for the homeowners association. So I've met all the criteria with the homeowners association, except for the setback, which they require the same 10-foot side and rear setback that the town is requesting. So they don't have a problem with the fact that the shed's there. They don't have a problem with the design of it. They don't have a problem with the color of it. They don't have a problem with the roof on it. They don't have any problems except for the fact that it's not conforming to 10 and 10. I did not know that the bylaw stated once you took down a non-conforming pre-existing structure that you had to meet the sideline and rear line setbacks. So when it was originally 3 feet and I moved it to 6.5 or 7.5 feet, I thought I was doing a good thing. My neighbor, if you don't mind going back to the picture of my neighbor's fence. And there's perfect, Mr. Planky, thank you. As you can see, my neighbor has kept his fence line 35 feet in from the property line, and he does not use any of that space. It's all overgrown, natural vegetation land, like you said. So I have a shed here. His main complaint is that he thinks I'm invading on his privacy, but he doesn't use this space. And my land, because the previous owner put a pool in, my land is plateaued, so it's higher in the back than it is in the front. And the view from my shed, looking back towards the street, when I stand there, all I can see is his gutter and his roof line going up. If I move the shed forward to where he wants me to move it and over where he wants me to move it, I can literally watch his wife do dishes at the kitchen sink right through his back window. And my girlfriend, in fact, took pictures to prove that to him and went to his house and asked him if he would like to see the pictures, and he looked at him, and his response was, "I don't care, tear it down. I don't want it there." Now, this may not have anything to do with this situation, but my neighbor at 184 Pendula Court, when we bought our house in November of 2020, we met them the first week we moved in, and we were very friendly with them. We spent Christmas with them, we spent birthdays with them, we spent holidays with them, we spent anniversaries with them. They came to our house, we went to their house, we did lots of things together. My girlfriend and I were living in New Hampshire, using this as a vacation home. So every time we came down, we got together with them, we were very friendly. My girlfriend and I broke up in New Hampshire in 2022. And my neighbor decided to stay friendly with my girlfriend. I've never spoke to him again in my life.
Is there a reason why you can't meet the setbacks?
Is that the reason why I can't meet the setback? No, sir.
I said, is there a reason why you can't meet the setbacks?
The reason why I couldn't meet the setback is because my pool, which is pre-existing, if I had come forward another 3 or 4 feet like they were asking, it would encroach on the safety of coming out of the door of the shed where I bring my lawn equipment in and out, and there wouldn't be any room for the door to come out and access, the pool would be too close, basically. You wouldn't be able to have any room, which I think Mr. Breck was at my property, and he came into the yard and he saw the fact that my shed is close enough where it sits now. It's close enough to the pool that if I moved it another 3 feet, I wouldn't be able to come out the door of the shed with my lawn equipment to work on my property. So that's the reason, one of the main reasons why I put it where I did. And again, I thought that I had it 3 feet before and I moved it to 7.5 feet. I thought that I was doing a good thing. You can see in this picture how close we are here. This shows 30 feet from the edge of the pool to the property line, but this is actually over a little bit. This actually extends over to here now, so I only have about 4 feet from the edge of my shed to the edge of my pool. And unfortunately, I could move my ladder anyway, but the ladder to my pool, to access my pool, is right here because there's a pad where the ladder sits. So if I move this over, you wouldn't be able to come out the door of the shed. The ladder would be in your way. And again, I didn't want to knock the pool down, so that's kind of why I left the shed where it was. So, like I was alliterating earlier, we were very good friends, and I haven't spoken to him in a couple of years. I had a heart attack in April of 2023, and when I got healthy, that's when I decided to take on this project because I was on disability from work. I work 2 jobs, both in the city of Aiken. I work about 60 hours a week. I live by myself. I'm home all the time alone. And if I'm not at work, I'm usually in my house. It's not a party home. I don't have friends in town. I don't have family in town. My next door neighbor thinks that I'm turning my house into a party area, and that's simply not the case. He has no complaints. Nobody's ever been called for any noise violations or privacy violations. He just has a vendetta against me, and he wants me to tear my shed down. That's the only thing I can say, and I don't feel as though I'm doing anything wrong. Everybody's entitled to have a shed. There's over 160 properties in Deodar Estates, which is the homeowners association where I live. 66 properties have sheds that are non-conforming. Now, that's not my issue. Maybe they were non-conforming before there was a bylaw, and that's fine. All I simply ask is that I can have 7.5 feet from the property line on the side and the rear to access a shed without my pool being in the way. So that's the only thing I can say.
There are how many other properties that have non-conforming sheds?
66 out of 160 homes have non-conforming sheds.
And is this an issue with the HOA?
I don't know. I'm not on the HOA board and I don't deal with them. I just know that after I got a first letter from the HOA stating that I was non-conforming, that I drove around with my girlfriend, she can attest to it. We drove around and we stopped in front of every house and looked in their backyard and saw sheds that we assumed were less than 10 feet from the property line, made a list of them, and I just don't understand why I can't have a shed that may be non-conforming, even if I've improved the location of it from 3 feet to 7.5 feet. I know for a fact that there was a shed on the main street coming in that was just built last year when I was in the process of dealing with Mr. Dennis, the zoning officer, and I asked him to look at it on the way out, and I don't know if he did or not, but I never heard anything about it. They were building it as I was building mine, and it was right on top of the property line, but they didn't have a neighbor that complained, so he didn't do anything about it. That's my opinion. I don't know for a fact if anything was ever done. The shed still exists. I can take a picture of it. I could show it to Mike, and he could investigate it, but, you know, there's 66 properties out of 160 that have non-conforming sheds in Deodar Plantation. And that's not, if you don't mind going back to the big picture, if you have one. So Deodar Plantation is Grandiflora Circle coming in with Ilex, Marigold, and Pendula, and Foxwood, Atlas, and Cryptomera, and all these are in Foxhaven, which is a different development. But in this property alone, there's 160 homes with 66 non-conforming accessory structures in their backyards. So I just thought I was doing the same thing that everybody else was doing, was putting up a shed that was accessible for me to use. I have my lawn equipment in there, and that's about it.
Mr. Chairman, I have another question.
Go ahead, John.
That's an above-ground pool,
That's a 24-foot above-ground pool, yes, sir.
so it's not like it's dug into the ground. Is there any chance of that being moved?
I wouldn't go through the expense of moving it. If I had to do anything, it would be taken down, but I clearly don't want to take it down. My grandkids enjoy it when they come down. It probably is into the ground about this much because that's the way you dig above-ground pools in. I know that there's bricks all around the outside of it, and then there's crushed stone around it, and then there's the perimeter of the pool. So the pool itself is 24 foot around, but with the bricks around it, there's probably a 28-foot circle. About a 28-foot circle on the ground lined with bricks and crushed stone leading up to the edge of the pool. So I don't feel as though the pool could be moved. It's been there probably 15 years or more, and it's probably in a state that if you tried to take it down, it may not survive taking it down. I'm not really sure.
So, which would be more feasible? Well, I guess if you tore the pool down, you could move the shed over.
Again, if you look at that picture, I think it seems awfully clear. The neighbor has decided to put his fence up 35 feet from the property line, and none of that land back there where my shed is in the corner is being used by my neighbor, yet he still thinks I'm encroaching on his personal space, and I don't, like I said, I don't understand why. You can see he has a small, we've been to their house, I know the layout. He has a small patio out back, he has a grill and a couple of tables and chairs, and he has a jacuzzi here with a pergola over it. And when I stand at my shed, not that I stand out there and look around at my shed, because I only go out there to use my farm equipment, but when I stand here, the only thing I can see is his back gutter line and his roof going up on an angle. So all his personal space is down here. This is space that he owns that he does not use with overgrown vegetation. So I don't understand why the area in question is such a problem for him if there's nothing back there. And I haven't spoken to him in over 2 years. I've only seen him twice in 2 years in his driveway, and he doesn't talk to me, I don't talk to him.
But the reason you say you can't move the shed is because you can't get your lawn equipment out, but yet you told me you have a 2-car garage with no cars in it. Could you not put your lawn equipment there and then move the shed over? I'm just trying to come up with a solution so
Well,
that
I
you're not
understand,
against the
I understand that's a solution, yes, ma'am. Everybody has sheds. I keep other things in my shed too, other than my lawn equipment. I use it for storage. I do have storage inside my shed, inside my garage, along with a golf cart, some tools, because I'm a former contractor. So my garage is pretty full of stuff.
Well, I was just trying to figure out a way that you could be in compliance with the city's rules.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
but, go ahead.
Maybe you can clear something up
Yes, sir.
for me. You were denied in July of '23 administratively to get a variance for the building that was under construction, according to these photographs.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that right?
Yes, sir.
And help me with this, you agreed, in order to get into compliance, you agreed to move the building,
Yes, sir.
okay? To get into compliance.
Yes, sir.
And to get into compliance would mean 10 feet and 10 feet.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that right? Well, now you're showing a drawing here of 6 feet or 7 feet. What happened between the time that I understand the zoning official came out there and pulled a tape to verify, yeah, you were 10 and 10, and now you're 7 and 7. Help me understand that.
So again, my assumption is that I'm 7.5 on one side, almost 8 on the other. We were measuring to the fence, not to the property line, which is in between the two fences on the right side of the house and 1.5 feet back on the other side. I had previously jacked the shed up and had some friends come over from work to help me move it. And it was up on jacks and rollers and stilts, and it got moved and it got compliance, but I think the compliance wasn't the proper measurement. And then when I lowered it, it must have moved because it didn't have a roof on it. It was just a floor and 4 walls. So it was, I won't say light, but it wasn't heavy, and it was able to be moved with relative ease with just jacks and rollers. I put pipes under it and I rolled it. So after I got it in compliance, I had to jack it up to take the rollers out, and it might have moved, it might not have, I don't really know. I didn't think it did because I know the position it was in on the concrete pad, and it no longer lined up with the concrete pad. I let it back down, I repositioned some footings, and I started building on it. Because if you look at one of the previous pictures, if you don't mind going back, Max. If you look at this picture here, you can see it's just a floor and 4 walls with some openings in it, so it was fairly, it wasn't heavy, but it wasn't light. Now it's finished and it has a roof on it, it has doors installed, it has vinyl siding and trim, and all the makings. So it's a much heavier unit now. So it could have shifted, it could have moved during the process of lowering it back down, jacking it up, leveling it out, and everything else.
Do you really want us to believe that? I don't see land as a problem.
I'm sorry, sir?
I say I don't see land as a problem. Do you expect us to believe that the building moved?
Yes, I do believe that, because it
We
can
do
happen.
not believe that.
Okay. I mean, I could actually jack it up right now and put it on rollers and move it while it's finished if I had the right amount of manpower to do it. So a building can move when it's on rollers and jacks. There's no doubt about it that it can't.
Mr. Chairman, to the applicant, if this building moved, granted it's heavier now, so forth, but in this location, it's not in compliance. Would it be in compliance if it was moved to the other corner?
The other corner of the yard?
Yeah.
Uh,
Could it be in compliance if it was moved 10
Go
and
back,
10?
Max, please. Back one more time. So, no, forward one.
Yeah.
So if I took this right here and moved it over to this corner, could it be in compliance if I came in 10 this way and 10 this way?
and
I
stay,
think I would run into the same problem right around here, because I think the pool, as you can see, is 30 feet from this edge and 30 feet from this edge. So if I took the same shed with the same 10-foot measurements, I'm gonna run into the same thing with the corner of the shed right over here somewhere. So I think that's, because that's a pretty accurate drawing of what the back of the property looks like, and the pool is dead center in the property. See, if you look up top, you can see that I wrote 85 feet as a dimension on the green lines, but if you look at the city drawing, this is why I'm telling you the measurements aren't exact. If you look at the city drawing, this is 91 feet from property line to property line on the sides. This is 91 feet on the city map. And I have it as 85 feet because I measured my fence. So I have 3 feet on both sides of my fence to the property line. That's why I think that it's actually, the measurements don't really sound like it's only 6 feet. I think it's a lot closer to 10 feet or 9 feet and maybe even 9'6". And I mentioned that to Mr. Dennis, and he said without getting a surveyor, they didn't really know. But Max, do you have a drawing that shows the 91 feet across the rear property line on my property? Because you did show me that downstairs.
Not in this presentation. I mean, again, we rely primarily on either survey markers or GIS. There's a scale on this map, so I mean, it could be figured out that way. But generally, we'll pull a line, using the digital tool. I mean, it certainly does look like it's wider towards the rear, but I don't recall the actual width, off the top of my head. But
Yeah, I think when I was downstairs with Mr. Planky earlier this year, he showed me the zoning map of my dimensions of my property, and my rear property line is 90.9 feet, which can be confirmed, obviously, through city maps. But I had it, if you don't mind going back to the other drawing, Max. I did that drawing myself, and I wrote green as property line, but green is actually my fence line. And it shows it at 85, because I do believe it's in a few feet on each side. That's why I don't believe that the measurement that was taken was that inaccurate. I think that it is 10 feet to the property line, but they're telling me it's not. And without a surveyor stake back there, I can't confirm or deny whether it is or isn't. There used to be a property stake in the back left-hand corner of my property when I started this project, and it's since been removed, and it wasn't removed by me. I can guarantee you that 100%. There is no stake back there. Now, if you go back to the zoning map, Mr. Planky, there's a property stake right here showing the rear corner of this property. There was a property stake here, and there is a property stake here. This one seems to have gone missing, but I know that I have 90.9 feet, so I measured from this property stake over 90.9 feet, and from there I measured back to my shed, and I believe I have 10 feet. And I mentioned that to Mike, and he said, I don't think you do. Without a property stake, it's impossible to tell. And he thought that this was the right route to go. So again, the other picture I drew shows 85 feet across the rear, but it's actually 90.9 feet. So there's some play on the sides there in question, whether it's all on one side or whether it's split on both sides. I'm not really 100% sure. Now, I heard Mr. Planky mention earlier that you could assume, if you don't mind going back, Max. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
that's the beginning of the.
Oh, all right, go forward then. Right there. I heard Mr. Planky say earlier, with no surveyor stake back here, you could assume that the stake is at my fence line, and he decided to move his fence line in 3 feet. It could be the other way around. This fence could have been on the property line, and my fence could be in 3 feet. It could be down the middle. I'm not 100% sure there's no stake in the back corner anymore. There used to be one. So I don't know why you would assume automatically that the stake would be on my side of the fence line and my fence is on the property line when there's 3 feet between the properties, between the two fence lines. It could have been that he put his fence up first and he put it right on his property line, and the other people that owned the house before me put their fence 32 inches in, I don't really know. But I do know that I have 90.9 feet across the back of my property, and the picture that I drew only showed 85 feet. So there's almost 6 feet in question of property that I didn't account for in my original picture. And again, that picture that you see, if you don't mind pulling it up, Max, that picture that you see, I drew that picture in June of 2023. Before I met with Max and Mike downstairs and knew what my actual property line was in the back, I just measured my fence line. And I have 85 feet of fence back there. But I've since found out that I have 90.9 feet of property back there.
I think the problem isn't the pool as much as it is the trellis. Because if you take that shed and just turn it, you got 10 foot between you and your neighbors, and you can come forward on that slab that's in front of it, and you'll have 10 foot. It's just getting rid of the trellis and turning it.
The trellis isn't even attached to the pad. It's
Well,
just
that's
sitting.
what I'm saying. Okay, then there you go. I mean, I think the pool I can see. It's not very movable. But the trellis, if you just turn that shed to where the long side between you and your neighbor's property is 16 foot, and it's 12 foot going across, you'll have it 10 by 10. You got the slab there. You know, the trellis can be moved to the other corner of the yard, or I'm just suggesting that as a
That's fine.
possible
I
solution.
don't mind you
We've all
suggesting.
tried to come up with solutions, but I have to ask a question. Can we call for a question on this? Call for a vote? We don't have a motion on the floor. Because we just keep just hearing the same things over and over again.
Yes, you can call for a question.
Does someone want to make a motion?
I've actually still have an additional question
Okay, well, I'm sorry.
for the applicant. All right, so on this drawing, so the shed, and all I could do, I didn't get to access into your rear backyard, but I walked between the fence lines, or walked to the rear. So I've got the scope. Your privacy fence works well, because it was hard to get a great view of what you got here. So walk me through the dimensions that prevent the shifting of the thing 2.5 feet from your rear property line and 2.5 feet in from the side property line. That gets you in compliance in relation to the pool with the measurements that you have there.
Well, again, that drawing was done before the administrative review. That's not the actual position of the shed anymore. The shed has been moved to the right and moved forward considerably, so it's not where that picture is anymore. That, again, that was turned into Mr. Planky in June of 2023. So that was a year and a half ago. The shed has since been moved, and it's in a different location. If I had to guess, the front edge of the shed is now about right here. And this corner of the shed is now about right here, where the slash is in the 30. So it's not even in that location anymore. That picture is actually an inaccurate picture. Whoops. That picture is actually an inaccurate picture that was done in June of 2023, showing where I originally put the shed. I had since jacked it up and moved it to a different location. And unfortunately, I have some pictures. I don't know if they... I don't know if you can see in this picture, but in that picture, it shows the corner of the shed, the front right corner of the shed sitting on the concrete pad. In that picture, the corner of the shed is no longer on the concrete pad. It's dragged over closer to the pool 3 feet. Can you see it? If you'd like, I'd hand my tablet to you. Or I
No,
can-
I saw that.
So the location here, current, is not the same as that. It's actually been moved 3 feet this way and 3 feet this way.
You're calling that current, correct?
This picture was taken tonight.
Okay. So the distance between the sidewall and the side of your pool is what at that deal?
Distance between this wall right here and my pool, this wall right here,
Yeah.
where the doors are. Hold on. So those are the doors that face the pool,
Okay.
right? You can just see them on the side here. So you're asking the distance from there to the edge
Correct.
of the pool? After I put the step into the shed, there's about 4.5 feet from the corner of that step to the edge of the pool.
So where did you have, when the city inspector, it passed his measurement test, where do you suppose the shed was, and why did you think at that point that it would work? And then based on it apparently moving, whatever, you didn't catch it moving or whatever, but you were apparently okay with the 10 feet that the inspector was trying to hold you to.
I actually think that that was pretty close to the location that it was. Believe it or not, I actually think it may have been over another 4 or 5 inches, but it was off the pad. I don't know if you can see it, but the corner of the shed is off the concrete pad by 2.5 feet. If you look right in this location, right here, the concrete pad is there, the corner of the shed is there, it's about a 2.5 foot gap. The original location of the shed was 6 inches, oops, I'm sorry. The original location of the shed was 6 inches in on the concrete pad. So it's actually been moved 3 feet already. As you can see, that pad is 17 feet and the shed is 16 feet. So I was in 6 inches there and I was in 6 inches there. Now I'm over by 2.5 feet this way, so it's actually moved 3 feet that way.
All right, so
And with the 3 feet that way, the 6 feet I have from the shed to the fence, and the 1.5 foot I have from the fence to the property line, I believe I'm conforming.
yeah, we're all, everybody's making a lot of assumptions on this.
Yeah, exactly.
So to the board member Breck's comment on you adjusting the pergola and adjusting the positioning of the shed, why would or would that not work to achieve the 10 feet that we're going for? John, would you like to go through your, I don't know, I'm not sure I followed it, but I was trying to, on the picture, trying to.
Well, if you just take and rotate the shed, the existing shed, that buys you 4 feet, because it's 12, is 10 foot, it would then be 12 by 16, only going this way. You could slide the shed forward 4 feet, still be on the slab, just that you'd have to move the trellis.
So again, the trellis is not attached to the concrete pad, and I don't even mind removing the trellis. The concrete pad, I have chairs out there, and I sit on them while my grandkids play in the pool. So I'm not saying anything can or can't be changed, but the design of the shed with the doors facing out into the yard, it was built that way. If I changed it and moved it forward onto the concrete pad, I'd lose my sitting area while my kids played in the pool. My grandkids played in the pool. So I don't, not that it's not an option, but turning the shed 90 degrees and dragging it forward so it's off the rear property line would cause me to lose my concrete pad. Whether there's a trellis on it or not, I could care less. If there's a trellis, I would lose my sitting area to sit and watch my grandkids play in the pool.
It would be 13 foot square, or you would then have 13 feet to sit, rather than 17 if you turned it and slid it forward.
Well, the design of the shed was designed to go that way. You know, the doors face the side. I didn't want the doors facing my property. It's just the way I put it up. Whether it can be moved or not, I don't really know. Turn to be compliant, I'm not really sure.
It is not our duty to figure out how this can come into compliance. It is up to the property owner. Okay? And I'm sorry, gentlemen, I know you've both been trying to come up with solutions, as was I when I was talking about the storage area, but that's not really our job. So I call for the question.
I'm trying to get to the question you're calling.
Mr. Chairman, in order to call for the question, I thought that would have to be either a motion to approve or deny.
Correct.
Yeah, just to end the debate.
Just to end the debate,
Okay.
okay?
So,
And now somebody can make a motion to deny or permit. Approve.
I have no further questions for the applicant. I don't know if anybody else does. We have the applicant at the podium, so I'm just saying, I'm done with my question.
Does anyone have any further questions of the applicant? Thank you. Do we have others to speak to the variance request? Final call. Others to speak to the variance request? Seeing here none, the chair would entertain a motion so we can enter a period of discussion. Now, Nancy?
What did he say?
I wondered if you wanted to make the motion.
Well, I can make a motion so we can vote. Make a motion that application 2593005, variance request from Robert to permit, I can't say his last name, to permit a reduced side and a rear yard setback at 176 Pendula Court. Just a minute. 6-yard and rear setback. I can't say that the location of the structure be I'm leaving out number 2, that the final order shall run with the land and shall be recorded at the ROD office.
Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, may I ask, is your motion to approve or deny? I was unclear on.
I said approve.
Okay,
Approve.
That was so that we could
okay.
have discussion among us.
I need for a second, I'll second it.
Okay. It's been properly moved and second that we approve the variance request. Do we have any discussion?
My discussion really is for the city in terms of, this is the second one tonight where we have very imprecise and unclear property lines where people are fighting over feet to get stuff approved. And, you know, you either taking the homeowner at his best interpretation, or it was the same with our first hearing as well. Obviously, the city can't go out and survey all these things, but something in the process, you know, to come before us and fighting over 2 feet, 1.5 feet, 2.5 feet. you know, it'd be nice to know exactly what we're looking to do here. Who knows? The fence, his neighbor may be on the fence line. He may have an actual 3 feet over there. Don't know. I built my fence exactly as was hypothesized by the applicant. I stopped 1.5 feet from the line, as did my thing. Because for fence maintenance and all that, we wanted about a 3-foot deal so we could take care of either side. We could get down between the fence lines if whatever was needed. Sounds logical. May be wrong though. His may be on the fence. It may be less than he thinks it is, or it could be more, or it could be down the middle. But you know, feet make a difference. So this is kind of a you know, kind of a maddening situation here. Now, I would say there appears to be some movement options to consider here in terms of just not knowing where we're at with precise measurements. I'm inclined to be conservative and not grant a variance because I don't really know what I'm granting and holding to the letter of the law, especially if there's a chance that some things can get moved around per board member Breck's suggestion. So,
Mr. Plakeney, if this is turned down, could the owner get everything surveyed and come back if he is in compliance? Like, he's suggesting that maybe we're wrong with the measurements.
Yeah, so unfortunately, as Board Member Doherty mentioned, the city is not able to survey property.
No,
so,
I said, could the owner do that?
Yeah. So I'm just to explain that based on that, we have to go with our best, assumptions, ergo using the fence line as the de facto property line.
yeah, I
But
mean,
to clarify, yes, I mean, theoretically, as part of these applications, an owner can get their property surveyed, but that the onus is on the owner, right? I mean, they have to take the time, the expense to get that done. Yeah.
Wouldn't the a plat from the county be an official dimensions?
but it's got to be surveyed. You got to set pins.
You have to know where the pin
So
is.
that's the only way to get a hard
But,
measurement.
I mean, there is, every piece of property has a plat on file, and they've established these property lines.
And you can have a surveyor come out based on the existing plat to do the measurement so that they can verify the lines. That would be at the property owner's expense to do that, to verify it. It's usually the safest way to do it.
But my question was, if this is denied, which at the present time, I feel like that is what is going to happen, could he pay on his own to get it surveyed? And if, in fact, the city is wrong with their measurements, he can come back here. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, if
Okay.
the application is significantly different insofar as perhaps maybe it's an 8-foot variance,
Right.
8-foot property
Because
line.
he's presenting it that it could be this, it could be that, and we don't actually know for sure. But I can tell you that if the measurements are right, then the conditions are the result of the applicant's actions. And so this would have to be denied. But if the lines are wrong, then he could come back.
You can come back.
Do we have a responsibility, though, as far as the HOA and what applications were perhaps not submitted like, I know that they override some of the ordinance that we have to rule about, but if the proper procedure was not executed, are we not opening up a situation where we're ruling against established HOA CC&Rs that were given to every homeowner that purchases in that?
Well, I could amend my motion to be,
Well, he still would have the HOA compliance issues. We're not waiving, we would not be absolving him of those.
No.
We're saying that from the city's perspective, you have to meet the city standard of 10 feet, 10 feet.
Right.
That's all we're ruling on. If he's out of compliance because the building, I didn't even get into the height of the building. Is it taller than 12 feet? Those are all HOA
Yeah,
issues.
they got, the HOA got.
That's their problem.
That's their problem.
Yeah, and his problem, but not our problem.
Right.
Mr. Doherty, if you don't mind me interrupting, yes, sir. The HOA in my community has 3 restrictions on accessory buildings. A, less than 168 square feet of floor space. B, less than 12 feet to the ridge height. and C, meeting the 10-foot sideline and 10-foot rear line property setbacks. Those are the only three restrictions put forth by the
are
Deoda
in session,
Homeowners Association.
not allowed to
I
take.
have met the 168 square foot or less guideline. I have met the 12-foot.
You're out of order.
Yeah, I get it. Again, that's not really our concern, but I understand
We
that.
are in discussion right now. I am not recognized as speaker. We are in discussion.
Well, in order for this to be approved, he has to meet all the criteria in here. And if you can see any criteria that he's met, let me know, but I can definitely say criteria number 3 has not been met and 4 has not been met. So my only hope is that the applicant can get it resurveyed, find out that the city's wrong, and come back. Because I will not be able to vote for this even though I made the motion. Call for the vote.
The vote has been called for. Those that are in favor of the motion to approve the variance, show by raise of the right hand. Those opposed, same sign. The motion is denied. That is the last item on the agenda. The chair.
Move for adjournment, sir.
It's been second. It's a non-voting motion. We stand adjourned.